Listen to me. Don't you dare say you can't do this. Don't you dare give in to that voice that tells you you're too weak, too far gone, too broken, too tired. Of course you're weak. Of course you're not enough. That's exactly where the truth begins. The problem is not your weakness. The problem is that you've been trying to live on your own strength, and that's why you keep falling. You think I can do this means you can do it by your own power, with your own determination, your own grit. No, that's pride disguised as confidence. I can do this only has power when it's spoken in surrender. It means I can do this because I have been made new, because the one who called me will also equip me, because the strength of the one who raised the dead is working in me. Stop feeding your fear. Stop glorifying your struggle as if it defines you. Your circumstances are not your master. Your emotions are not your truth. The world will tell you to believe in yourself. But what has that ever accomplished apart from exhaustion and disappointment? You must believe in the one who is faithful, the one who never fails, the one who takes the weakest vessel and uses it to display his glory. So when you say, I can do this, let it not be a boast. It must be a declaration of dependence. You can stand because you have been lifted. You can endure because you are being sustained. You can overcome because victory has already been purchased for you. And when everything in you screams that you can't, when the darkness presses in, when the burden feels too heavy, remember this: it's not your grip on him that keeps you, it's his grip on you. That's where your confidence must rest. That's why you can look at the impossible and still whisper, I can do this. True strength comes from surrender, not self-reliance. That statement sounds contradictory to everything the world teaches, doesn't it? From the moment we're old enough to understand words, we're told to be strong, to believe in ourselves, to stand tall, to never let anyone see us weak. We're told that success belongs to those who push the hardest, to those who fight the longest, to those who never admit they need help. But that's not strength. That's pride dressed in determination. And pride, no matter how noble it looks, always leads to collapse. True strength isn't about how tightly you can hold everything together. It's about knowing the one who holds you together when everything falls apart. The human heart was never built to carry the weight of the world. You were not designed to be your own savior. Every time you try to live by self-reliance, you take on a burden that your soul cannot bear. That's why exhaustion comes so easily, why despair follows when you fail, why fear grows even in moments of victory. Because deep down, you know you're not enough, and admitting that doesn't make you weak. It makes you honest. Surrender is not giving up, it's giving over. It's laying down your illusion of control and placing your life in the hands of the one who actually has control. It's not passive resignation, it's active trust. It means you stop fighting against the truth that you cannot save yourself, and you start resting in the truth that there is one who can. The world calls that foolishness, but it is the beginning of wisdom. Because in that surrender, you are finally free from the tyranny of pretending to be strong. Look at the lives of those who have truly endured, who have truly overcome great trials, not by their own willpower, but by grace. They are not people who boast about how strong they are. They are people who wept, who struggled, who reached the end of themselves and found, in that place of desperation, a strength not their own. That is what it means to be strong through surrender. When you stop relying on your frail resolve and start relying on a strength greater than yours, you are no longer limited by your humanity. You are upheld by divine power. You may ask, how can surrender possibly lead to strength? Because surrender realigns your heart with reality. It breaks the delusion that you are the center of your world. It humbles you to admit that you are dependent. It opens your heart to grace. the very thing that empowers you to endure. When you stop trying to be your own foundation, you finally stand on solid ground. That's the paradox. When you stop clinging to your own control, you gain the stability you were searching for all along. Every trial you face is a test of where your trust lies. When everything is stripped away, when your plans fall apart, when the doors close, when your best efforts collapse, what remains? If your confidence was in yourself, then you will crumble. But if your confidence was in something greater, then even in your brokenness you will stand. Because your hope does not rest on your ability to hold on, but on the unshakable hands that hold you. Self-reliance is seductive. It makes you feel powerful, independent, in control, but it's a fragile illusion. It works only as long as life obeys your expectations. When storms come, and they always come, self-reliance crumbles. It cannot withstand loss. It cannot conquer fear. It cannot carry guilt. You can strengthen your mind, discipline your body, and refine your skills, but there will always come a moment when you reach the end of what you can do. And that moment, painful as it is a gift, because it reveals the truth. You were never meant to do it alone. Surrender teaches you humility. It teaches you patience. It teaches you that the world does not revolve around your plans, but around a greater purpose, and that realization doesn't diminish your life, it enlarges it. Because now your story is no longer confined to the limits of your willpower. Now your weakness becomes the very stage where strength is displayed most clearly. The reason many people resist surrender is fear. Fear of losing control, fear of what will happen if they stop striving, fear that if they let go, everything will fall apart. But what they don't see is that their desperate grip is the very thing causing their pain. You cannot heal while you're clinging to what's killing you. You cannot receive peace while your hands are clenched around anxiety. You cannot receive strength while you're still pretending you don't need it. True peace and strength flow into open hands, hands that have released their illusion of control and said, "I can't, but you can." There is a deep, unexplainable power in that kind of surrender. It's the strength that carried people through unimaginable loss, persecution, sickness, and suffering, and yet they did not collapse. They stood not because they were naturally strong, but because they leaned on a strength that never wavered. That's the difference between self-reliance and surrender. Self-reliance says, "I will make it happen." Surrender says, "Even if I can't, He will see me through." One leads to exhaustion, the other leads to endurance. When you rely on yourself, every success inflates your pride, and every failure crushes your spirit. But when you rely on the one who cannot fail, success humbles you and failure refines you. You no longer see trials as proof of weakness, but as opportunities to trust more deeply. And that's where growth happens, not in your moments of strength, but in your moments of surrender, because when you are weak, you are forced to reach beyond yourself, to depend on something eternal. Many people misunderstand surrender as passivity, as if it means doing nothing, as if it's weakness or laziness. But surrender is not standing still in despair. It's standing firm in trust. It's taking action, but with a heart that knows the outcome does not rest on your control. It's obedience with humility. It's courage with dependence. It's walking forward, knowing your steps are guided by something far wiser than your own understanding. Surrender transforms how you see struggle. You begin to see that even pain has purpose. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What are you teaching me?" You realize that the very things you thought were breaking you are actually building you. Because surrender does not shield you from hardship. It strengthens you to endure it. It gives meaning to your suffering, hope in your waiting, and peace in your uncertainty. Self-reliance isolates you. It makes you believe you have to handle everything alone. It builds walls around your heart, but surrender connects you to grace, to truth, to others who are walking the same road. When you admit your need, you open the door for help to enter. You create space for compassion, for love, for community. And that's another paradox of strength through surrender. The more you admit your need, the more you are strengthened by the hands that reach to lift you. There's nothing noble about pretending you're unbreakable. You are human. You bleed, you cry, you fail, you fear. The beauty of surrender is that it acknowledges all of that honestly, and still says, even so, I will trust. That kind of faith is not weak, it's courageous. It's easy to trust when everything is easy, but to surrender when everything hurts, to choose to trust when your heart is trembling, that is true strength. Surrender also reshapes your definition of victory. The world says victory is winning, conquering, achieving, but in truth, victory is obedience. Victory is faithfulness. Victory is standing firm in the storm because you know who stands with you. Victory is not about the absence of struggle. It's about the presence of perseverance. You may fall, you may falter, but if you rise again by grace, you have not failed. And here's the mystery: when you surrender, you don't lose yourself. You find yourself. You discover who you truly are when you're no longer consumed with proving your worth. You find freedom when you realize your value was never dependent on your performance. You find strength when you stop hiding your weakness and start allowing grace to work through it. That's when you start living, not striving to be enough, but resting in the truth that you are sustained by something greater than yourself. In surrender, your perspective shifts from control to trust, from fear to faith, from striving to resting. And this doesn't happen overnight. It's a daily act, a choice you make when everything in you wants to fight back, to grab hold again, to take control. Every morning, you lay down your will again. Every evening, you remind yourself that you are not your own. And over time, you begin to see that surrender isn't the end of strength. It's the beginning of it. Think about it. What kind of strength do you want? The kind that burns out after a few battles? The kind that depends on your mood, your health, your success? Or the kind that stands even when the world falls apart? The kind that doesn't depend on circumstance, but on character, on something unshakable within you that cannot be touched by failure or fear. That's the strength that surrender brings. You will still face storms, you will still fall short, but when your strength comes from surrender, failure doesn't define you anymore, it refines you. You no longer measure your worth by outcomes, but by obedience. You no longer live to prove yourself, you live to trust, and trust, when it's real, produces peace even in chaos. So don't be afraid to surrender. Don't be ashamed to admit your weakness. Don't be afraid to say, I can't do this on my own. Because the moment you do, you will begin to taste real strength. The kind that doesn't waver, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that stands firm no matter how fierce the storm. You will find that surrender doesn't make you powerless, it makes you free. And in that freedom, you will finally understand that true strength was never about you at all. It was about the one who gives it. Confidence is rooted in faith, not feelings. It is a truth that runs contrary to the way the world teaches us to live. The world tells us to trust our emotions, to rely on our experiences, to measure our worth by how we feel at any given moment. If we feel capable, we act. If we feel insecure, we hesitate. The world calls that wisdom, but it is a lie. Feelings are volatile, fleeting, and often deceptive. They are not the foundation upon which lasting confidence can be built. Faith, on the other hand, is steady, enduring, and anchored in reality far beyond our own perception. To truly be confident, we must learn to trust the unseen, the eternal, the unchanging, even when our emotions scream otherwise. Consider how often your feelings betray you. There are days when fear dominates your mind, and you feel utterly incapable of facing what lies ahead. You feel anxious, inadequate, weak, and hopeless. Yet, if your confidence is rooted in feelings, you will allow those fleeting emotions to dictate your actions. You will shrink back, hesitate, or retreat entirely. But faith does not operate according to feelings. Faith operates according to truth. Faith trusts in what is certain, even when what is felt is uncertain. Faith says, I may feel weak, but the one who strengthens me never changes. I may feel afraid, but the one who has conquered all fear is with me. That is the difference between confidence in feelings and confidence in faith. Faith does not ignore feelings. It acknowledges them, recognizes them, and even wrestles with them, but it refuses to be ruled by them. Feelings are a response to circumstances, and circumstances are constantly shifting. You cannot trust something that changes every day, every hour, every minute. Faith, however, is rooted in something far higher, the promises, character, and power of the one who is eternal. Faith says, I cannot trust my emotions, for they are fleeting. I will trust him, for he is steadfast and unchanging. That is the kind of confidence that endures storms, persecution, failure, and loss. The Scriptures repeatedly call believers to confidence based on faith. Confidence rooted in human experience is like building a house on sand. Confidence rooted in faith is like building a house on rock. The storm comes, the wind blows, and the flood rises, but the house stands firm. The difference is not in the absence of struggle or difficulty. The difference is in the foundation. Emotions may rage like waves, but faith holds. Faith says, though my heart and flesh fail, the one I trust will not fail. Many people confuse confidence with arrogance or self-assuredness. They believe that to be confident is to feel unshakable, to feel strong, to feel fearless. That is a superficial confidence, dependent entirely on perception and circumstance. True confidence is much deeper. It is not about what you feel, it is about whom you trust. It is calm in the face of uncertainty, steadfast in the face of opposition, courageous in the face of fear. It does not demand that circumstances conform to your desires. It rests in the truth that God is faithful and his purposes cannot be thwarted. Faith gives confidence a foundation far beyond the shifting sands of feelings. Look at the reality of life. Feelings will often betray you. You may feel worthless, unlovable, or incapable. You may feel abandoned, defeated, or hopeless. Those feelings are real. They are part of the human experience, but they are not reliable guides. Confidence rooted in feelings will rise and fall like the tide. Confidence rooted in faith will remain, because it is anchored in something eternal and unshakable. It does not ignore the reality of struggle. It does not pretend that you feel strong. It simply says, I will act not according to what I feel, but according to what I know to be true. Faith requires discipline, for it goes against the natural tendency of the human heart to trust sensation over reality. It requires intentionality to choose belief over emotion, obedience over instinct, and trust over fear. That is why so many falter. When the pressure rises, when the heart quakes, when the body trembles, it is easy to rely on what you feel. Faith, however, calls for a higher standard, a confidence that does not depend on how you feel, but on whom you trust. Faith anchors the soul, steadies the mind, and strengthens the spirit. Consider the example of someone facing a great trial, a serious illness, financial collapse, betrayal, or loss. Feelings of despair are natural. The human mind recoils from suffering. The body responds with fear. The heart breaks. If confidence rests in those feelings, the person will falter, withdraw, or despair. But if confidence rests in faith, the person can endure. Faith does not erase pain. It does not negate struggle. It does not deny fear. It simply overrides the fleeting power of feelings by anchoring the soul in something unchanging. Though I feel weak, I will trust the one who strengthens me. Though I feel hopeless, I will trust the one who brings hope. Though I am afraid, I will trust the one who conquers fear. That is the essence of faith-based confidence. Faith also reframes failure. Feelings react strongly to failure. They produce shame, discouragement, regret, and fear. Confidence rooted in feelings wavers at the first sign of defeat. Confidence rooted in faith, however, sees failure through a different lens. It recognizes that setbacks do not nullify the promises of God, that mistakes do not erase His faithfulness, that weakness does not cancel His power. Faith says, I may stumble, but I am not undone. I may fail, but I am still upheld. I may fall, but I will rise, for my confidence is not in myself, but in Him who never fails. Faith-based confidence also produces courage. Real courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in spite of fear. Action based on truth, not feelings. Courage rooted in emotion is fragile. It evaporates at the first threat. Courage rooted in faith is unshakable because it rests on the certainty of God's character, power, and promises. The person who acts out of faith may feel afraid, but fear no longer has dominion. Confidence rooted in faith says, I may be afraid, but I will act, because I know the one who is greater than my fear. Furthermore, faith-based confidence transforms how we respond to uncertainty. Life is inherently uncertain. Plans fail, circumstances change, people betray, health fades, and death approaches. Confidence based on feelings cannot withstand uncertainty. It crumbles because feelings demand consistency and control. Faith-based confidence thrives in uncertainty because it rests on the unchanging. It does not require perfect circumstances, only a perfect God. It does not need the assurance of comfort, only the assurance of truth. Though the path is dark, I will walk in faith. Though the future is unknown, I will trust the one who sees the end from the beginning. Though my emotions are turbulent, my confidence is fixed on Him. Faith-based confidence also produces perseverance. Feelings are fleeting. They change with fatigue, pain, or disappointment. Faith, however, sustains. When emotions falter, faith continues. When doubt arises, faith endures. When the heart trembles, faith remains firm. That is why the greatest victories in life are not won by the most talented, strongest, or fortunate, but by those who trust God even when they cannot feel His presence. Faith does not need to feel the outcome. It knows the outcome is secure in God's hands. The difference between faith-based confidence and emotion-based confidence can be seen in decision-making. A person who relies on feelings asks, how do I feel about this choice? A person who relies on faith asks, what is true? What is right? What does God require? The first acts impulsively, swayed by emotion. The second acts with certainty, anchored in principle. One is unstable, the other steadfast. One rises and falls with emotion. The other endures regardless of circumstance. Faith-based confidence also brings peace. When confidence depends on feelings, the soul is constantly tossed by anxiety, worry, and self-doubt. Peace is fragile because it is contingent on circumstances and emotions. Faith-based confidence, however, produces a deep, abiding peace. The person who trusts God knows that regardless of how they feel, God's promises are true, His power is sufficient, and His purpose is unshakable. Peace flows from knowing that confidence is not in human capability or emotion, but in divine constancy. Faith-based confidence is also contagious. People can sense it. When someone walks through life grounded in faith, calm in the storm, courageous in fear, and steadfast in doubt, it inspires others. Confidence rooted in feelings inspires only when emotions are positive. It crumbles at the first sign of difficulty. Faith-based confidence, however, shines in adversity. It becomes a testimony of the reality and power of God, a living demonstration of the strength available to those who trust Him above their own perception. In summary, feelings are temporary, unreliable, and often deceptive. Faith is eternal, reliable, and rooted in reality. Confidence based on feelings rises and falls with circumstance, while confidence based on faith endures all trials, all storms, all failures, and all fears. Faith does not promise the absence of difficulty, but it promises the presence of strength. Faith does not promise the absence of fear, but it promises courage. Faith does not promise perfect emotion, but it promises unwavering support, guidance, and truth. The call is not to ignore your feelings. They are real, and they often reveal areas that need attention, prayer, and growth, but to place them in subordination to truth, to act not according to how you feel, but according to whom you trust. That is the essence of faith-based confidence, knowing that even when emotions fail, God does not. Even when circumstances are bleak, God is faithful. Even when your heart trembles, God's promises stand firm. And when confidence is rooted in that faith, it becomes unshakable, enduring, and eternal. Faith-based confidence does not depend on perfection. It does not require that you feel strong, courageous, or capable. It requires only that you trust, obey, and hold fast to the truth of God's character and promises. That is why it endures, why it overcomes, why it transforms ordinary people into vessels of steadfastness, courage, and victory. Feelings are unreliable, but faith is sure. Confidence based on feelings is fragile, but confidence based on faith is unbreakable. Confidence rooted in faith does not fluctuate with circumstance. It does not fade with fatigue. It does not vanish with fear. It remains steadfast, unwavering, and true, because it is built not on the shifting sands of emotion, but on the rock of the eternal, unchanging, and faithful God.